So good morning. So today is August 3rd, and it's pretty noisy outside, but I just figured I'd, record anyway because I feel very inspired, and I didn't want to do it inside. So we'll see if you guys can hear me. Today is August 3rd. Today's daily attendance. I will not upload a link, okay, because we're done with the grade. So you do need to, like and share whatever it is that we do, right? So that way I have a record of it, but there will not be a link and you will not get graded on it, okay? So for these 3 days that I'm going to be uploading, there will not be a link for SU for attendance. I've graded everything. I was really gonna, I was so mad this weekend at, in several occasions that it really, at some points it took away from, the beauty of the essays, because there was just so much people that are late, and then it was so much work for me, and I really have to make sure that I check that out, and that you guys aren't conning me, and all. It became a hot mess. And then there was people that just a hot mess. So I decided not to focus on that, because I want to focus on the positive, and I really want to focus on the essays, which were amazing. But having said that, so let's go to the essays. So I'm almost done. I think I have a couple of people that I'm just gonna correct in terms and grade. There are some people that are trying to con me, okay? And if it's not you, then don't, que no te caiga el saco. Don't put the suit on if it's not you, right? But which I have a huge problem with. But it's just a lot of energy, and I don't want to spend it on correcting that. So I'm not gonna give it any energy. If you feel you need to not be transparent with me, it's on you. You have nothing to lose with me. I mean, it's not like you're gonna fail my class unless you really don't turn anything in, okay? So anyway, the other thing also is that this is really funny, and I wasn't gonna bring it up, but I'm gonna bring it up. So for the midterm, for my exams for you guys, there was some certain essays that sort of look the same, right? And I'm really good at picking up patterns. That's why I do very well in business, and that's why I did really well as a change agent in school, because I could pick up on patterns, and patterns are everything, and patterns is really what set me apart. So I also have a photographic memory, so I can sort of remember where I saw stuff or whatever. But it was too much of a hassle for midterm for me to go and trace it back or whatever, and I wasn't willing to put in the time and the effort, okay? So this time in the essays, so I'm just gonna call it out, right? So there's some of you that sort of share your essays and you just tweak it up a little bit, which is very disappointing, because what I really want you to do in this is just, what is it that you believe, and what is it that you think, and what is it that you can process, and what is it that you can do it. And if you're cheating on that, you're cheating on yourself, because it's not why would you even do that? Why would you even take someone else's work and make it your own when it's not yours? And you have nothing to lose with me. You're going to get the grade that you're going to get. So it's not like you have a grade, you don't have a grade at risk, okay? So that says a lot about you all. So maybe it's time to take ownership for what you do, and maybe what you produce is much better than what you copied, all right? So somebody sort of took an initial essay, and I'll mention several things. So get settled in, because this is going to be a long video, okay? And there's a lot of noise up here, but I really like being outside, and I don't know, they're cutting somebody's grass and whatever. I think hopefully it'll cease. So, but it's a nice morning. I already had, oh, there it goes. It already ceased. It just hurts my head, and so much noise, and even though I yell a lot because I come from a big family. But right now is really bothering me in terms of really concentrating. So let's go back to that, okay? So obviously you guys share portions of the essays, and I had caught it in the midterm, but I just let it go because it's not worth my time and effort, and it is what it is, right? If you want to do that, go ahead. The only reason that you would do that is because you really needed a really good grade, and for your GPA. As long as you turn something for me, even if it's crap, I'm going to give you the grade it is, because of all sorts of reasons that I don't want to get into it, right? So I had noticed it in midterm, but it was just, I didn't want to do it. So what happens? So whoever you guys took the initial essay, and of course this isn't for everybody, right? But the guy that did or the girl, right? Whoever the writer was that did the initial essay that you sort of passed it on, and you guys sort of took that as a basis, and then just sort of changed a little bit of stuff, and then just sort of made it your own. But the basis of it was wrong. Because the person that initially wrote, and then, if you're going to copy from somebody, make sure that he's smart enough, right? Or that person's smart enough and they know what they're copying, because if they're not, then whatever. And I'll tell you something about high school, okay? But so whoever initially wrote those, and I didn't want to put focus on this, but it's just really funny. So I'm just gonna mock you all. I'm just gonna mock you all, because it's either that or I get pissed and then get you on plagiarism, which is huge. If you get caught on plagiarism, you get like completely suspended from school, okay? And it doesn't matter what school, and you cannot go to another school if you get caught on plagiarism. So it's a very serious thing, okay? So just be grateful that I'm pretty chill, and that that I am who I am, right? So I think it's funny, instead of just really going at it and whatever, right? But I was a little hurt. I was a little hurt, because I can't believe that you would do this. But so anyway, so the initial content of whatever essays you guys shared, and there was quite a bit. I think there was like 5 or 6 people that shared that essay, okay? The guy that wrote it, or the girl that wrote it, didn't know what they were talking about, because the Tin Man did not need a brain. In the Wizard of Oz, okay? So it was the Scarecrow that needed a brain. So you all had the same mistake, right? You all said that the Tin Man, and you stated there's something about heart or whatever, but the Tin Man never needed a brain. He needed a heart, okay? The lion needed courage, and then the Scarecrow is the one that needed the brain. So so it's really funny to see the consistency on those essays that were plagiarized, right? Which is very, very serious. And there was a huge mistake on it, and nobody had enough sense to actually, double check it, cross-reference it, just for the hell of it, okay? And you probably would have done better just to write your own stuff. All right, so that's really funny, which takes me to, my son. So my son was in a private Catholic school, and it's very interesting because I don't know if I mentioned this in before, but he was doing really bad in public schools, and I admire my son so much for lots of reasons. And so he came to me one day and told me, hey, you need to move me. Anyway, long story short, so he moved, and he got moved to private school because he wasn't doing he wasn't doing all that great, and he needed to move. And I listened to him, and so there was some conditions, and this video isn't about that. I'll do another video on that because it's important. So listen to your kids. He thrived in the other school that I put him in, okay? But in the process of thriving, there's a lot of stuff that happened in that school, and I'm not going to mention who it is. But one of them was that they could buy essays, which, coming from a principal, and of course, I'm not in any way, suggesting to cheat. It's horrendous. You shouldn't cheat. You can get plagiarized. You can get kicked out. So whatever. But I will say this, okay? What I saw is the tenacity of these kids, okay? So there was Bill Gates scholars, okay? And maybe I should be mentioning this, but whatever. So there was very, very, very smart students in that school, as are in all of them, right? In all schools. And so they used to sell essays, okay? It was their legitimate work. And they were so brilliant, these kids that used to sell these essays, that they would, depending on what kind of essay you wanted is what you paid, right? So if you wanted an A, well, I think it was like $35 or 40. If you wanted a B, well, I think they, cut it down like 5 or whatever. And it was instant. They would write the essay right away, or they had something, I guess, if there was arrangements, and then they, they distributed the essays, and then obviously there was transactional, monetary transactions. So that was brilliant. So if you're gonna copy something, at least make sure that the person's legit and they know what they're talking about, because whoever you guys copied from, the Tin Man does not need a break, okay? And that wasn't what the song was about. So anyway, so I had a myriad of interpretations for the song. What it really taught me was that I really need to teach interpretation for my classes, because there's a lot of people who sort of didn't get it. There was a lot of people also that, I don't know if they didn't put effort in or whatever, but I was quite offended. There's some people, just very few, that said it was just repetitive and it didn't mean anything. That just means that you didn't put any effort in and you're just turning in something. I was very... I was very insulted by it, and I thought it was a huge disrespect. Okay. There was also other people that had no clue, like they had no clue, all right? And then there was other people that Googled it, okay? So you all had the same thing about Kaleidoscope, okay? So that was really funny as well. All right, so more than anything for my class, I would think that you want to be yourself and you want to be able to state whatever it is that you can, because you don't get to do that ever in your life, especially when you're in a systematic system or pattern like school or business or whatever. You don't get the liberty to really express yourself with no risk, because with me it's no risk. You get your grade as long as you turn something in. And there's some stuff that, I mean, it was really bad, but but nonetheless, I understand that some people are going through a really hard time, and I understand the complexities of this. Although in the end, you are who you are, and you have to turn in quality stuff if that's what you wish. I know that I do. I always turn in quality stuff, and I always try my best. Okay, so that was it. That was really funny. But now let's get into the legitimate, like, hardcore stuff. So I want to thank Mary Galkin, I think is the name, and please forgive me, I can never pronounce your name, and then of course Hawaiian, because both of them, before they initiated their essay, they very much wrote something very poetic and something very profound for me specifically. And so they both referenced my brother, right, who passed away, which is why we did this song. Okay, so I was very honored. Thank you so much, and it brought me to tears really in the end. And so they were extraordinary. It was an extraordinary symbol of respect, which is what other people didn't do, right? The ones that cheated or whatever, or didn't or whatever. And it was an acknowledgement of my videos, right? That's why we chose it. And so Mary, and please forgive me if I did not get your name right, but specifically said that, in the first time that I mentioned my brother, that she felt that, he was part of the community and stuff like that. So that was beautiful. And then I wrote you something, Mary, so I hope that you saw that, and I hope you really, progress in that and pursue it, okay? And thank you so much, Hawaiian. So that was really, really beautiful. In of itself, the essays were extraordinarily beautiful. They were very profound. There was some that I told them to go back and reread it and listen to them, because they just didn't get it, okay? There were several things on the essays and the profoundness and the depth of that of that song. Now, part of Googling, right, is that you sort of get an interpretation, right? And some of you guys got an interpretation, but it hinders you as to what your true interpretation is. So you have to be very careful, because some of you Googled it, and so they gave you a sense, but it depends on who the writer was and who the interpretation was, right? So there was a myriad of interpretations, and based on whatever it is that you Googled, right, you sort of weaved that into your interpretation that could possibly be yes or no, okay? Because every interpretation depends on the person that is interpreting, right? And on your life experiences. So even though those interpretations, like there was one that, they were doing drugs and this and that, I don't know that they were doing drugs, right? I never got that. They probably were. I don't know the boundary, whatever. But, maybe the person that was interpreting that you guys researched on Google, maybe that guy was doing drugs, or maybe in the 70s they were doing drugs, or who knows, right? So it tarnishes your true and pure interpretation of what it means to you, right? Which really is part of the reason that I do dream interpretations, okay? So let's go into my dream interpretation business and my dream interpretations. Part of the dream interpretation, and part of it being so unique, is that the dream is specific to the dreamer, period, okay? I give a message and they understand the message. I don't understand the message because it's not my life and because I don't know what they're going through. Once I give the message, right, because it's a true, as best as I can, and pure interpretation of what the symbolism is, they understand the message and it fits to their life, okay? So you guys sort of did the same. You had an interpretation, right? Maybe you guys needed help, and so some of you Googled it, right? I'm not saying everybody, and that's okay. It's okay for it to be Googled. But then you took on that interpretation instead of saying, well, maybe this is what this means, okay? Which leads me to the suds, okay? To the suds, all right? I had never seen that stance, okay? And I've looked at the song a lot of times. And once one of my students mentioned it, right? And they mentioned, I sort of didn't know what this was, and I Googled it, and I appreciate that, right? And there's nothing wrong with Googling as long as it's your work, okay? So I went back and reread it, okay? Because I had never noticed it, right? So as much as I hear it all the time, I had never put it together until Ural's interpretation and Ural's essay, which was beautiful, because what it did to me is that it gave me a much more profound interpretation of whatever I was lacking on or whatever I hadn't noticed for this particular song, right? Which was a Timna. So what happens? I went back and researched it, okay? In that stanza, he talks about soap suds being green or something like that. Okay, you guys can reference it. I'm not, I wasn't prepared to read out the stanza because it's not really about the stanza and what it says, but it's about the interpretation. In that stanza, he is mentioning that they're smoking and they're, gab, right? They're talking, okay? And so, what the image of that frame of time, because all music and all poems and all writing and everything that you tend to express is a frozen moment of your life experience, whatever it is, okay? And it is an explanation and a true description of how that perception and what was lived is seen and experienced, okay? So as is with everything, and as is with life, and as is with past, like my siblings, we could have been in the same place at the same time, living the same thing, but each one of us has a different perspective and a different interpretation of how the events went down, okay? For all sorts of reasons, because maybe, as I mentioned in one of my other videos, maybe you're in a different angle, or maybe your life experiences broaden you, right? So my life experiences, I'm going to have a more profound one than maybe someone that hasn't had that many life experiences, and age has nothing to do with it, okay? So I went back and I saw that. So when they're talking and they're giving the gift of gab, right? I think is what he says, is the gift of philosophy, of really, I had my brother had this very good friend that was Cuban, and they used to come all the time because my brother was up in Oregon State studying, and so it was a very international university, so they used to come for like Christmas, and we used to travel with them a lot, and Mama used to take them with us and whatever. And so the Cuban, right, Jorge was his name, he's like, somos filósofos de café, we're coffee philosophers. And what that means is that you're talking about life, and you're talking about experiences, and you're talking about theories and philosophies over coffee, right? Why? Because we're not PhDs, and because this isn't what we do, but everybody's philosophical about life. So we're philosophers of coffee, right? While you're drinking coffee, you're talking about life, and that's what they were doing. They were smoking. Who knows what it was, right? It had never occurred to me that they were smoking pot or whatever. There was some references in the essays that they were like doing drugs. I don't know. I didn't get that. Now I don't. I didn't Google the song, right? So I don't know, and I've never done drugs. I mean, it is what it is. So it's not something that I would come up. So what I envisioned is what I have my experiences, right? I've had a lot of experiences where the conversation is deep, and it's philosophical, and it's impactful, and it's about life, and it's about discussing life, right? And this is what I do in my YouTube videos. And so they're smoking, and maybe it's after a nice get together, right? And so and I sort of envisioned that it was sort of all men for whatever reason, okay? So it's sort of a smoky room that they're in, right? And there's a stained glass. So in the stained glass, and that means like the churches have like windows, right? That they're stained glass, and they're very elaborate, and they're different colors, right? So as the smoke, and it's a smoky place, and it's a smoky place what they're in, right? Maybe like after a cocktail, or maybe a party, an after party, or maybe a dinner, or maybe they just got together. This can happen over beers one night. One of the best conversations that you've had are just sort of like you just sit and be, right? And things sort of come up. And so, and it's with ease and comfort and risk-free, and over maybe a good dinner or good wine or bourbon or tequila or whatever, right? Or coffee, right? Philosophical coffee. And so, and then he mentions the soap suds. So when soap suds become bubbles, right, and they're huge, and you could do the, the like with the kids play, right, or the soap suds when you're in a bathtub. I don't do bubble baths, or when you're playing in the kitchen and you're washing, right, dishes. There's soap suds. The thing about the soap sud and what they said is kaleidoscope, right? But it's an iridescent, and the reason that they say kaleidoscope is because it sort of changes in terms of color. But it really is an iridescence, and there is some green to the soap, and the soap suds always. It sort of looks kind of greenish, kind of bluish, right? There's a specific color to the soap suds that exist, and so he was comparing the stained glass with the soap sud color. That's why in Google it said kaleidoscope. Well, yes, but really more importantly than a kaleidoscope, because it sort of changed, right? A kaleidoscope is a different type of colors, but it really was about an iridescence, a light shedding through the stained glass or not, right? We don't know, but he noticed the stained glass. So that is a picture, that is a moment frozen in time, that as he's doing the gift of gab, right, which is the philosophical coffee, being philosophically over coffee or drinks, and he's smoking, he sees this stained glass, right? Because obviously he was in a place that had stained glass. So stained glass isn't anywhere. Okay, so it had to be like in a home or not in a church, because they're drinking, or maybe not, and they're smoking, but you don't smoke, right? And they're talking. It's a very bohemian type environment, as well as a very festive, contemplative, right? It doesn't have to be that it's festival and whatever, but a special time. And with the colors of the stained glass, which are always very different, there's blues and there's greens in the stained glass, there's yellows, right? Think of a church when you see all the stained glass on the side, and then the light is coming through. So he compares that to soap suds, and the comparison is with the color, okay, of the soap suds. So whatever the soap sud colors are, instead of referencing the stained glass and saying it's greenish, it's bluish, he says, it's sort of a it's soap suds, and that's the comparison it is, okay? So that was a beautiful comparison I had never noticed, okay? So I finally understood it, because there was a not understanding on most of the essays of what that was, right? They also say that, everybody's quick to take the bait. Who knows? Obviously it's about love, right? And obviously it's about something that we so much desire that we have in it. So overall, everybody did a beautiful, beautiful job, because in the end, and the most important message of this, and there's several, and it depends on your experiences, right? And everybody related to the experience, and that's fine, okay? So I did tell some people, go back and reread it, because they just didn't get it, okay? And some people, I think I had one of my students has never seen The Wizard of Oz. That was crazy to me, because I thought everybody had seen The Wizard of Oz, right? It's sort of like, I don't want to get into it. It's sort of like the other ones. Anyway, so in the end, right, it says Oz never gave, and then, since it's English, somebody said it's a double negative, and it is, right? And you can do that in music because it's sort of lyrically, and it has to rhyme, okay, to some degree, or maybe it doesn't, okay? And all music is poems. Every single music is a poem, okay? Whether people believe that or not, but they're beautifully, but it's a more complex poem, because not only is it a poem in terms of lyrics, it's stanzas and music that has to be put together and intertwined in order to go with the poem. So I mean, it's more complex than truly just a poem. Music is. I just realized that. So going back to that, it says something like that Oz didn't give nothing to the Tin Man that he didn't already have. Although the Tin Man didn't have a physical heart, and that's what he was hoping for, right? He in the end had something, and he had love, and he gave love, and he was so much loved, or whatever, right? And he didn't need an actual heart to have love, or to give love, or to experience love. He thought that he needed an actual heart, right? Because he was born without a heart, because he's a Tin Man, right? And so what it means really in the end is that we're sometimes, mostly always, seeking things that we already have inside, and it is going through. It can also be metaphor, right? When I went to El Camino, it was very interesting, and I just put it two together just recently. Is that, you know, there's those arrows, right, that I showed you, or I think it was on my dream interpretation, and you have to like follow these arrows, which was very interesting. And the arrows are yellow, and we have to go through this path. And so while I was doing the path, I said, you know, it's sort of like the Wizard of Oz. So the Wizard of Oz is also about coming of age, of maturity, right? And of many, many, many things. About, you know, breaking down your demons, you know, the witch, right? That she could get her home with a initial quest to get home, right? And home is not a physical place, all right? It's a place of being, and it's a place of sensing, and it's a place of maybe community, whatever home is for you, right? Home is not the physical act of being home. It's not the physical brick and mortar, but it's about self. And so in this journey, right, that Dorothy started on alone with her dog, right, a true loyal friend, she encounters these guides, right, that are also seeking something, but together as a collective, they achieve their goal, which is something that they all had the power to have, okay? She always had the power to go back home. The lion always had the courage within him. The Tin Man always had the heart he needed. The Scarecrow always had the brain that he needed, or not, okay? But they had it in them. So it was about truly finding themselves when we're seeking for something that we think we lack, but we do not, because we have it in. But it is through the journey of life that we find ourselves and we find who we are, okay? And he mentions that, okay? And that is the symbolism that he attaches to the Wizard of Oz. So then, you know, and he talks about Sir Galahad, right? About integrity, you know, and I never understood the Sir Galahad. But it's about, you know, being together, and it's about what you believe. And there does not need to be a cause, right? He says there doesn't need to be a cause for the gift of gab. You can just stay and be philosophical and think, or have your integrity, because that's who you are, because you have your integrity. You don't have to be a knight of, you know, of the round table to have integrity, or to seek integrity, or to do just, right? Because it is who you are, which is exactly what I've told you. You are who you are always. And it is through my pushing you, right? My nudging you to understand who it is that you really are. That's why I don't understand why you would cheat with your essays, because that's not what I want you to do. I want you to fully understand who it is that you are, and nudge you to become the best that you can be, right? Because you have it in you already. You just have not discovered it. So he mentions the knights, which are beautiful, right? What are knights? You know, knights are honorable, whatever, this and that. And so he puts in that as well. And he also mentions, you know, to take the quick bait. So what bait are you taking? We don't know, right? Something that's in the shelf, that's expecting, that's something that's there, that's for you to be available. Some people reference it to sex, you know, sex sucks. Sex, drugs, and I don't know what else, right? It can be, but it cannot. If you are truly aspiring to have something in terms of love, will you find that in sex? Will you find that readily available? It probably won't, but you're going to take the bait because you think, right? Or we have this an ideal. Let's take love. That love should be this certain way. And so you take the bait because that is your ideal, right? But maybe that's not what it should be. And maybe you should go through your journey to figure out what it is for you and not take the bait. Maybe if it's something that everybody wants, maybe that's not what it really is. And maybe that's where the confusion is about life and what we think we are and what we think, right? You know, the Tin Man wanted a heart. He needed a heart, right? Everybody else has needs. Do we really need them? Or do we already have it? Or do we seek something that we already have in? Very complex subjects. What is it? Now, let's talk about the English part of this, okay? Because this is just the philosophical, right? And this is just about the interpretation. And that's why the gift that I have of interpreting is such a gift, because I am here to tell you, to sort of show you what it is that you cannot see, because it is through symbolisms that we figure it out, and it is through our journey, right? The yellow brick road. What is your journey, right? What is it that what is your path? What yellow brick road are you taking? And what are you wanting to achieve? And what is it that you are seeking? Do you know? Or will you take the bait? So let's talk about English, right? The essays were moving. The good essays. The crappy essays were just, very, it was a waste of time for me, really, in the end. And I'm all about time. It was disappointing, to say the least, but I'm not going to focus on that. The true profound essays, right, gave me a glimpse of your life, gave me a glimpse of what it meant to you at that moment in time, for that segment, for that frame of life that you had to analyze this, in which you make connections to your life and what you've been through. That's what it showed me. On the other hand, okay, how powerful it is to be moved by sheer words. Because they are not sheer words, but they are ideas, and they are emotions, and they are experiences, and they are complexities that are expressed in written form and in language about life and about your experience and about how it's affected you or not. Okay? There was two, right? And you know who you guys are. There was two essays that moved me so profoundly that I cried. And I'm not an easy crier, okay? I cry when things matter. When my dad lived and he passed away when I was very young, he saw me one time watching, the TV, and I was crying. I swear to God, I must have been like 7 years old. And he passed by, and he was always very busy, so he never had time for TV. And then he came back and he said, "What are you doing?" And I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "You're crying while you're watching TV?" And I was stunned because I so much respected my father, right? And he told me, "Do not waste emotions on things that are not yours and is not your life and that you're watching through TV. Save those emotions for your life and for what you have gone through." Changed my life forever. I will refuse to waste my emotions, whether joy, whether happiness, whether sadness, whether grief, on things that I am not living, that are not mine. And all emotions are important. It is not just important to be happy. It is not just important to be joyful, but it is important to feel the grief of a death, because you are so much missing them. It is important to feel the love of the non-existence, because maybe that person passed away. It is through all these emotions that we so feel and we so experience that make us us. And so how amazing that you can have such a powerful effect on what it is that your thoughts and the depth of your writing, of this essay, of this complex, maybe not so complex, maybe more complex than we thought, interpretation that was required of you to move your teacher or anybody to tears. It is then when you have achieved your goal. And that is what English is about. Many blessings, love and light. Namaste.